Hey, Kelly, how are you?
I'm good. Just me, huh?
So far, all right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Have you heard from anybody else?
Oh, well, I was with Dewilla last night.
Okay.
We talked about she'll be here.
Okay.
I doubt Dawn will be.
Yeah, I didn't
I think she's
expect.
still on vacation.
Well, I've got it recording already, so hopefully I won't mess up this time. So how's your week been?
Okay. A little warm.
Ah, that's been, there we go. There's Peggy. Hello, Peggy. How are you?
Good. I just sent Carol the link. She'll be on shortly.
Okay.
And Dewilla said she has the link.
Yeah, I know Carol had responded back and said she got my email.
Yeah, she
And
just didn't
Dewilla,
find it tonight. I know sometimes my things get lost.
but
Let me call
tell me
Dewilla.
about it. You know, I kept plugging in something and I said, "Oh, why is this not coming up?"
What are you
And
trying to
I was looking at a different meeting when I
Oh,
teach that
God.
Sunday school class, and I was pulling it. I was, oh, all right. There's Carol.
I'm calling Dewilla.
Hello, Carol. How are you?
Hey, Mark, I'm good. I lost your link, and thanks to Peggy, she sent it along. Hey, I need your phone number, Mark. I realize all I have is your email address. So let me add it. What is your home phone number, or the phone number you use most of the time?
912-659-2095.
Great.
That's mobile, so you
Oh,
can
good.
text me on it. That'd be great.
912-659-2095.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Right. I got the 912-615.
No, 912-659-2095.
All righty. Putting you in here.
All right.
And I didn't get a hold of Dewilla.
Well, I had dinner with her last night. She certainly knew about it.
She's just forgotten.
How did your concert go?
Oh, it's coming up.
Ah, it's coming up. Oh, I thought it happened.
There she is.
Hello, Dewilla.
I'm going to go get my book.
All right. Yeah, I need to get some characters here
Characters?
for focus note 1,
Oh,
actors.
I
I need somebody to be,
12.
yep, I need somebody to be the narrator, Martha and Jesus.
Would you, what page are we on, Mark?
269.
Thank you. Okay.
And I need somebody that would like to be crowd.
I'll be Martha.
Okay.
Crowd.
Okay. Do I hear a narrator?
I'll do something.
Okay.
I guess I'll do Jesus.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about
It's
Jesus.
been, it's
have
been a
to.
while. It's been a
Somebody's
while.
got
Yeah.
to.
Okay.
You have to.
So we got Jesus, we've got crowd, we've got Martha. I need a narrator. Somebody
do-
like to narrate?
I'll narrate.
Okay. And who said they would be crowd?
Well, I can do crowd or
Oh,
narrate.
I tell you.
Does Carol
You're-
have a part?
Yep.
I'm
Carol,
Martha.
Carol's Martha. Peggy, did you want a part?
Peggy, you're
Peggy's
muted.
muted.
Yes, I love having just 2 lines. I love it.
Okay, so you'll be crowd?
Proud.
Okay. All right, narrator, could you start?
All right. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many people had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home.
Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask.
Your brother will rise again.
I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day.
I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?
Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come into the world.
And after she had said this, Martha went back and called her sister Mary aside.
The teacher is here and is asking for you.
All right, let's go to page 270.
When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When those who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet.
Lord,
Peggy, okay.
that's Mary. Whoops.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Peggy, would you like to be Mary as well?
You're muted though.
That was a good one too. I was really in there.
All right,
Lord,
we're ready.
If you had been here, my brother would not have died.
When Jesus saw her weeping and the crowd who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled.
Where have you laid him?
Come and see, Lord.
Jesus wept.
See how he loved him.
I like that. What did we hear in Mary's response? Blame?
Blame.
Blame, yeah.
Well,
That's,
I took on the anger. Blame and anger.
Hmm.
In my voice, that's how I interpreted it anyway.
Well, given this chapter, it's a form of grief, I think.
Mhm.
mhm.
Yeah. Grief talking. It is.
So what about the 3 quick points about grief? What did you, how did you write, or what did you respond about those? The grief being normal, natural, and necessary. I thought about that when I was originally going through my Stephen ministry, and how Charlie Brown always used to say good grief. And in many ways,
Yeah.
grief can be a good thing. It can be something we need to go through. Did anybody else have a comment about that?
Yeah, I
And-
wrote something. I want to just go back. Go ahead, somebody else. I'm looking for it.
Well, I took training to be a doula, end of life doula, and
Oh.
through that training, I've come to understand how important good grieving, full grieving is, and how natural and necessary it is. And yet in our society, I'm afraid we feel embarrassed to show it, or and it's not very well understood.
We want to sometimes feel like we want to take care of things. We want to help that person get past that grief and get on with their
Yeah.
life.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it was the same thing we learned, is that we are not the cure. And we keep rushing people to be cured
Mhm.
instead of,
So what is this about Christians can and should grieve? That goes back to the good grief again.
I don't think it's exclusive to Christians.
Mhm.
I mean, anyone who loses someone they love grieves, whatever their
Right.
faith or lack of faith.
but I do remember a time in my life when, hearing in my church that because we're Christians, we shouldn't grieve. They're in a better place. You know that? They're in a better place.
Well, that, yeah.
They'll be in a better place. I mean, this is about death. I'm just talking about that. But God, let's see, what's the other one I hear? Oh, it's all part of God. And
Hmm.
Yeah, if you believe that everything is planned out in advance before we're born, which was what we learned, that means that it's going to happen when it's scheduled to happen.
mm,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it does do away with free will to believe like
Mhm. What about the caregivers need to focus on the care and the grieving person's frame of reference?
What do they mean by frame of reference? I'm not sure I follow that.
The way
Well,
I would go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, my frame of reference to me is listening to what they're saying, and to some degree determine what stage of grief they're in and what kind of grief that they're in.
Okay.
To some, to me, as caregivers, we're there to hold their hand and help guide them through their grief. And it's nice to know what's driving that, I think.
Anybody else have something written down or response to that?
No, but I don't know if I was late or not, but my brother apparently got in a wreck this morning, and I was talking
Oh,
to him
no.
on the phone, trying to talk him through stuff, because he's really upset. He had never had anything like that happen to him before, you know. You know my brother, Mark, you work with him.
Yes.
And he was just real upset, and so I've been talking to him. I don't know, it happened this morning, but Ruby had her little birthday party at the pool. That's why it looks so beautiful like this. And so I was with them all day, and I couldn't go help him. It was on 37th in Montgomery. He was coming in town to mow the yard, and he hit this lady and she went off in an ambulance and everything, but he was just all upset. So it was a kind of a grieving kind of thing, because he just was so beside himself. He's never had anything like that happen before, and he just doesn't know what to do. And my nephew, I had just gotten out there to King George Boulevard to the party, and I myself had gotten lost. I don't know, we were talking about that what is it, Veterans Parkway, how busy it is now, and it just looked different. And I got somehow, I don't know what I did in the traffic, but I was all mixed up anyway. But my nephew came in town and helped him out and all that stuff. But I guess that was a kind of grieving. So that's a frame of reference. It's not a grief where somebody died, but it's a grief he's having. He was in the wreck, he didn't know if he hurt somebody or what. I don't know what kind of state you'd call it, but
it sounds like his state of reference would be anxiety.
yeah, was real anxious today. Yeah.
Not knowing what, may become of the accident.
Yeah, what's going to happen next with the.
Yeah.
Right.
I did try to calm him down, because I've had several people hit me here in Savannah, and they never go to court, but the insurance company will take care of all. I was trying to stay calm myself and just say, the insurance company will deal with all that. You don't have to worry. The insurance company will take care of it, and he's feeling a little better, but.
I hear there's 1 or 2 lawyers here in town.
Well, he did. I told him, the insurance company will take care of it. It's up to that lady. Even though he thinks he ran a light, he said, I'm not sure, but I think I must just. And I said, the insurance company will take care of it. She calls, you call. And he said, I already did. And the insurance company said they see that she's already had several claims. So I think, and that made me think, maybe she's like an ambulance chaser. So they will take care of him. I was trying to, maybe I was using some of our skills to help calm him down. I don't know.
That's good. That's
I
good.
don't know, because I usually get upset myself, but
From
I
what you
was trying
said,
to calm him.
from what you said, it does sound like he was in the first step of shock.
Yeah, that must be what it was.
He couldn't think straight. He didn't know what happened, and that's shock to me. So
Why did this happen to me? He said, why did this have to happen? I just
well,
don't understand it,
those Christians saying, why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
I'm realizing now, as we discuss frame of reference, that the point I'm taking away from this is that in the context of a grieving person, I need to recognize what that person's feelings, fears, situation is, and not impose my interpretation on it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, think about this house here, the safe house. They talked about it a little bit in the film last week. So you would have been starting, DeWilla, when you talked to William, with listening. That would have been one of one of the prime things. And then as you responded, I'm sure you responded very empathetically. I would have thought that sympathy wasn't what he needed. And we understand that there's such a big difference between empathy and sympathy. And that kind of leads on to the mud hole on page 272. Where we've got the person providing sympathy, he's over identifying by going down into the mud hole with the individual. Whereas the empathetic person, he's got his grip on something. In this case, the tree root. Because if he gets sucked down, if you get sucked down into the grief, then you're not being as much of a help as you could. So let's use use your brother as example for the next one. The course of a crisis.
Hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Life was normal. And then an event occurred. And he experienced stress and anxiety. I think about the two routes you have to take.
The top one is let the insurance company handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so did anybody comment about this?
Well, I think that's what DeWilla was doing. You were reassuring him, go
Mhm.
down this road and your insurance company's gonna take care of this for you. You pay insurance for. And I hope I hope that helped him.
Yeah, I felt bad, all guilty all day that I hadn't called him yet, but I did call him one time and didn't get him, but because I was with all the kids, you know. But once I did call him, he was outside in his backyard making a fire. He said that was helping him calm down. He said it's 100 degrees outside, but I'm fire. He likes being outside and has sitting, you know, but so we had time to think and time to talk to the insurance company. So, because when he first called me this morning, he was real upset and I didn't know what to say. So I'm glad I had a little time to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you didn't know what to say. Probably listening is what he needed, though.
Yeah, yeah,
Probably.
It's-
Yeah.
And then checking back in with him the way you did to Willa.
yeah.
I mean, that just shows how much you care. You're present for him. You're willing to help and listen.
Yeah.
And he did a very natural thing. He found a diversion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And you say, that's actually something you can compliment on. Well, good. Let's focus on your fire. 'Cause you
Yeah.
could-
Mhm.
On page 274, number 3, did you ever experience a grief experience, have a grief experience you'd like to share? And in my notes, it suggested making sure that everybody had plenty of Kleenex,
ah,
Hmm.
because sometimes talking about our own grief experiences can be a little sad, get a little teary. Anybody have something that happened with them that they'd like to share or that they had written down?
I will. My brother was in the hospital with a serious heart issue, and he remained. It was moved into the what was in effect a hospice setting in that hospital, and what I appreciated about the experience was that there was time to be present with him, even though for most of our time, I don't know that he was conscious, but I do believe that he was aware that people who loved him were around him, and that I was there and consistently showing up day after day as time went on. And in my life with other loved ones, they were sudden deaths, and there was no way of saying goodbye. There was no way of expressing love and tenderness in the process. But here was a case where I was able to be there, and it was on many levels, I think, a good death.
I will jump in and keep going on that same subject. My mother didn't know me for the last 6 years of her life. And, that was such a difference in her death and my father's. My father was 6 weeks from diagnosis to death. And he told us all in that 6 week time, we're going to laugh and have fun. We're not going to do sad stuff. We did. And so the grieving experience with him was one of remembrance, one of family unity, kind of like we haven't had in many, many years. And so it was kind of an example where grieving process was actually an extremely positive thing.
I remember the nurses calling the wing we were on God's waiting room.
Yeah.
In a loving way, they said it, it wasn't, and I thought it was just kind of sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. I love hospice in general. My father's hospice nurse and my sister were kind of battling it out before I got there. And she told my sister, says, he's not eating. And the hospice nurse says, honey, God's feeding him now. You don't need to be giving him food. And
yeah.
I experienced my parents two different ways because my mom had suffered from cancer for a while, and breast cancer first. Then they said it was gone. Then a year later, her whole body was eaten up with uterine cancer. It was just everywhere, And so we knew over a period of about a year and a half that it was coming. But she stayed happy and everything and positive, and my dad was positive, and she did all her treatments or chemo or radiation, all that stuff up until almost the last minute. But this one doctor that's in Savannah, he's not very he doesn't have very good bedside manner or whatever. But when she was in her 80s, see, when it happened, and he said something like, I'll give you 14 months or something like that, which her breast cancer doctor was so nice and sweet, and this guy was so different. But anyway, she beat the 14 months by about a month. And right before she did pass away, she goes, I showed him, didn't I? Like that. She was so weak and everything, but she still said that, But when she died, I don't remember crying or anybody being super sad or anything like that, because she had suffered for so long, And then when my dad moved in with me for a while right before he died, but we didn't know how bad off he was. He had gone in for congestive heart failure, but they never told us really that's what he had, and they shocked his heart a couple of different times and all that stuff. But Father's Day of that year it was 6 years ago, I think. No, it was 9, because it was right before Ruby's birthday, and Ruby will be 9 tomorrow. So he died, I think, a week or two before her birthday. But we had Father's Day, and then the next day he was here at the house, and all of a sudden he just passed away. And we weren't really expecting that. And I guess we were a little sadder with that one. But just one day here in the house, my son and daughter were here, and I just started like not screaming, but yelling his name, and got all of a sudden, it just came out, and I was crying and crying and crying and crying real hard. And it just kind of came, and my daughter and sons were telling me to stop. Well, my mama, But for my mom, everybody was happy and calm, and it was like, and then with him, we were all nervous, I guess, because it happened so quick. And then I just was screaming like that. But it was after it had happened, like a week or two, or maybe after he'd been buried and everything. So that was just too different. Then when my sister, another couple years, my sister had that metastasized cancer, and she fought it for 3 years, and her death was a little different, though. I don't remember getting super upset, but she was my little sister, so it seems strange. I still think about her, but 3 different types of grief right there. Bam, 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 in a period of about, 4 or 5, 6 years. But I don't know. So everybody's, I don't know why they were all different, but they were. But,
Mm.
the only one that I got real upset like that with was my dad. I couldn't figure out why.
So as a caregiver, you would be put in the position of having to try and meet the person
Mhm.
where they were in
Mhm.
their grief.
Mhm. There's a terrific little pamphlet, and maybe you all have seen it. It's a blue cover, and it's called Gone from Sight. Has anybody heard of it? I can pull it out of my
Never heard of this.
library when I get a chance to find it. It was written, oh my goodness, more than 20 years ago by a nurse who described the phases of dying and what to expect in each phase and what it looked like. And I was given the booklet when my cousin, who was very close to me, like a second mom, was dying. And one of the nurses had a copy. And it was so helpful because there are certain behaviors that are predictable in the dying process. And if we can recognize and understand that they're natural and normal, it's a tremendous help. It's a wonderful publication. I'm sure it's still out there. It's called, what did I say? Gone from Sight. Gone from Sight.
It's interesting you said that. Childhood memory. Our next door neighbor, my mother worked, and I would stay with this lady a lot. And she was like almost like a second mother to me growing up. Her husband died suddenly of a heart attack when I think I was 8 years old. My father made me go over there with them and talk to her during her grieving process with him. And he thought the understanding grieving was so important to him that even at 8 years old, he wanted to teach me how to talk to people that are grieving. And I will never forget that experience. You know what? It wasn't as hard as I thought.
I just found that the notation, the publication is called Gone from Sight, The Dying Experience. I'm putting it in the chat box.
Okay.
And it's by Barbara Carnes, Karnes. It's in the chat box. I think it could be really helpful for us. Whoops, let me put that at the end.
Mhm.
Barbara Carnes. Yeah, I think it would be good for us to have that.
I'm curious, Kelly, do you think that experience at 8 might have affected your decision to go into the career that you were involved with in the medical career?
Well, I think part of it was my father thinking that I would, but
Mhm.
more importantly, he just thought it was important that I understood death and that it was a natural part of life, and he wanted me to watch how you talk with someone who was grieving. Because after we left her house, he gave me a long conversation about how I needed to go and continue the same relationship with her, even though her husband had died. And, I was scared to go over there. I think that was probably, but, it's funny the little things you remember and, that really, stay with you a lifetime.
Were you
And,
afraid when you went there that day? Did you not want to go?
I did not want to go. I said, I didn't want to see her. And he says, come on. And he was such a natural because, he spent his entire life talking with people dealing with death. And It's a good thing he taught me because, you know, I ended up doing that. So
Yeah.
I think I love this chapter because to me, one of the most vital reasons I even wanted to do this has to do with dealing with people going through grief. I'm anticipating that that's the primary thing that we're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of that book that what's his name, Hope said that he
Oh,
wrote, don't
about
sing, what did he say,
empathy?
don't sing or something like that. What was the name of his book he said?
I need
The
to
other
get,
day in that video,
yeah,
don't
something
sing
like,
or-
don't sing to a sorrowful heart. I will look that up and put that in the chat room.
It's a
But
catchy
yeah,
title.
it was after his wife had died. You know, it was, you know, making sure that people understood that we don't, there are certain ways we can approach caregiving with somebody who's had a recent death, but saying, you know, I guess in his use of the word singing, saying that something was okay, well, this is going to be all right, and think about all the different hymns that talk about how we'll be with Jesus, you know, or and this type of thing. That's not necessarily what you want to hear at that time.
Mm-mm. No.
From focus note 7, let's look at that validating feelings. How do we, how would you validate the feelings of somebody who has just lost someone?
Every feeling is legitimate. I think we need to be able to recognize that and honor that, whatever the feeling is.
I would actually say, you want to talk about what you're feeling right now and just try to open up the pipeline, because most likely what they want to do is to talk about it, even though most of them say they don't want to talk about it.
But I think we do. I do.
Yeah,
I
you
really do.
Most of the time when people don't want to talk about it, they just want to talk about it. But it also depends, I think, Mark, on where you are with your relationship. If you're going into this as a care provider because of this grief, then you've got some building blocks before you can probably get too far down the pathway of, you know, truly understanding where they are.
Yeah,
But if
when
you already have a relationship and they have a death or whatever, then that's a little different, I think.
Mhm.
yeah, when somebody's been referred, usually by Ben, in this case, and we would talk to them prior to them even filling out the forms for Stephen Minister to sort of get an idea of what they were feeling. You know, we have several individuals in our congregation that are elderly, and some that feel like you know, that they feel like the end is nearer than that they would like it to be. I know one of the people that I teach in the Sunday school class is Ralph, and you know, Ralph has had a lot of
Mhm.
illnesses.
Yeah. Mhm.
So what did we think about the, I'm skipping through here, about on page 277, about the phase of recoiling. Phase 2, you know, the initial phase was where they had
Was shock.
We're in shock. Excuse me. I'm gonna have to get a little water here. I'll be right back. I should have had it right beside me, shouldn't I? But talk amongst yourself about the recoiling.
Be present. Okay.
Well, I liked all three of the phases. And this was one of the most meaningful chapters to me because I could see what I went through with my parents. But I don't know if you remember my talking about my friend Suzanne, that was her name. And I talked about how I talked to her throughout until her mom passed. Wow, almost a year and a half she stayed with her mom. And boy, did I see, I guess what this did was it put words to what I saw.
Mm.
And the recoiling phase to me was my most difficult time with walking with her. I just texted her today and told her the name of our chapter and told her it was really helping me remember what I went through with my parents, more so with my mother than my dad. Well, they were both difficult, but and also it reminded me of what she and I had done together. And she said, I look forward to talking to you about it. But I just, all the many, many things that happened in that recoil phase was just intense feelings, and then depression, preoccupation with thoughts of the loved one. And what was the one that I underlined the most was 261, sudden urges of grief. Just unexpectedly. We would, I'd be talking to her. And the last time we talked 3 days ago was so different from this time. This urge of this pop-up upsurge of grief would come. And I would say that was the most difficult period. Now looking back, that I had, as she said in her text today, thank you for walking with me.
I like that term, walking with me, because that's really what it is.
Mm-hmm. It is.
We are
Process.
not necessarily, we are not guiding them in a direction we want them to go. We're trying to help them to find that direction they want to go after a death.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's look at focus note 12. Think of the different questions you can ask to evoke feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find them helpful? Anyone stand out?
Well, my always favorite one is tell me a story about. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just like that one. I remember asking Suzanne about the third one from the bottom. What were some of the important events in your life together? And I remember how hard it was for her to think of them because she was so much mired in grief.
Mm.
And so I think, yeah, at the end, and then I shared with her things that she had told me that previously, and she had said, I forgot that.
Hmm.
So I was actually leading her one night, but she went along with me.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to, she was really in the mire, in the muck.
Anybody else?
Well, they are intended to be leading. They're intended because they're open-ended. They're intended to lead the person to remember. And I think that's so helpful.
I think there's a real tendency on the part of some people to feel like the best thing to do would be to let it go.
Hmm,
I
I
don't
don't think
know.
it is.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd ask number 4.
Sad or difficult. Yeah, that might be
I would not,
too potent.
I don't think I'd ask that. I might say, do you have a sad or difficult time that keeps coming up? I might ask that.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
Well, there may be times where you spend a session talking about the sad times.
mhm.
It kind of just, that would be a session of venting, allowing them to
Oh,
just,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, see, now I'm considering that to be part of the recoil, but I guess,
Mhm.
are we still in recoil? And I didn't, yes, we're
We
still in that. Okay, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
What did you say, Kelly? That would be a part of what?
venting. But,
Venting.
you know, what
venting.
if their grief wasn't about a death, but the fact that they lost someone in the last 10 years, they spent hating them, you know, and, you know, they felt the level of guilt was such that it may be letting them talk through some of the bad times and maybe self-realization that they really weren't such a bad time after all. But I don't know. It's hard, you know, I always hate trying to deal in hypothetical.
Hmm.
But I don't believe I would avoid, if it was appropriate, talking about sad times. I think there are times where that might be necessary.
I agree, and I wonder, it occurs to me, is this a stage in the process for a person who's grieving who might be well served to have some time with Ben
Mhm.
in the pastoral role, because we're not in the pastoral role, and nor are we therapists. What do
Yeah,
you think?
that's where we talked, you know, last week where the film talked about knowing when to recommend mental assistance beyond what you can do. And it would, you know, that's one of the reasons we have our regular supervision meetings.
That's
If you've
true.
got somebody that you could tell Ben, you say, I think this person right now needs a little bit more than I can provide. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be a participant, but I think maybe if, you know, even if you wanted to go with me a few times, Ben, you see, saying,
Right.
help me help them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm on page 280 now. One of the things that always used to drive me crazy was platitudes. Has
Yeah.
anybody had anybody respond with something like that when they were grieving about anything?
It's for the best.
Okay.
Oh,
Buck up. Get
oh,
over it.
this too shall pass.
Right.
Or when I lost my first baby, the nurse, she didn't mean anything bad, but she says, "You're young, you can have more children."
Oh, boy.
Mm.
I guess that's a planet.
Yikes.
Yeah. She didn't mean
Yeah.
to try it, but
If you have to respond with the word yikes, yeah, it's not a good thing.
Well, the platitudes here are good examples of what not to say.
Mhm.
I really watch myself using the word feel. How, you're gonna feel better. How do you feel? And
Mm, mm,
the reason for my being with them would be to determine that without saying, the word feel so much ambiguity to me,
mm.
but that's just my own personal guard.
Or that she lived a good long life. When people are real, a lot older and they die, people say that she had a good life, he had a good life, he had a good
Yeah.
that's one of the most common ones people say, isn't it?
Yeah.
When the older people go.
And it's well meant, but
Yeah, it is.
it is, but not in this context. I mean, not for us in this context.
Yeah.
Would someone like to be the Stephen minister and the care receiver and the example on focus note 15? And just read through it, and let's talk about how something like that would make you feel as the care receiver, putting yourself in that role. Who would like to be the Stephen minister?
I'll read it. You just want us to read it.
Right.
Okay.
And then we'll discuss it.
Okay.
Someone like to be the care receiver?
I will.
Okay.
I
All right.
noticed when your friend told you everything would turn out all right, it seemed that wasn't what you wanted to hear.
No, it wasn't. That's so easy for her to say, but she didn't lose her husband.
It sounds like you're thinking she doesn't really understand what you're going through.
No, if she knew what it was like, she wouldn't have said that.
And it hurt you that she said that?
It did, even though I know she was trying to be helpful.
What do you think?
I think that's a very honest exchange. I think
Yeah.
we all try to be helpful, and then we slide into those platitudes without meaning, with the intent of being helpful and we're not. So I think we really need to watch our words and the word choices.
Yeah.
So they were talking about how you have the friends and the relatives people you may communicate with, but that's where Stephen minister can be most helpful, because here's somebody that's unbiased. In my opinion, we're not going in there trying to make any type of judgment or put a band-aid on something.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think, I was talking to somebody today and telling them about these pages here. And they said, I said, I don't know where the line is, but it said, oh, don't use platitudes, cliches, and other hurtful expressions. And they said, well, what would be hurtful? And they really were being honest. They couldn't see how, and I gave them an example, and they said, well, how's that hurtful? So it really opened my eyes to people who really don't even understand how that could be hurtful. This is somebody I know really well, so I was surprised, but it just opened my eyes to, oh, well, then I had to explain how it's hurtful, that was hard to do. Well, yeah, but I don't see why that would be hurtful, and it just went on, and I thought, wow, Okay.
These platitudes just to me show lack of empathy. You're not really thinking about the situation.
Mhm.
You're sugarcoating over it. Yeah.
They're
In
too
many
easy.
ways, yeah, in many ways, it's saying, "Yeah, you should just get over this."
Well, actually, that's what the person said.
And I think as people who are, the regular people are hearing somebody struggling, it's uncomfortable for them. And they just assumed that discussion ended too. So the platitude is I'll say this and then maybe we won't have to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I
death
do,
is unnerving and uncomfortable for all of us to talk about because we don't have experience with it.
I do remember in that first chapter, that the prep chapter, in that recoil phase, the person who's grieving is recoiling in these many different ways, and the friends have gone on back to their lives. So I thought, wow, what a big gulf there is in communication
Yeah.
and perspective. So that's when these things come up, or folks say them during that time, I think.
When my father died, my sister lived out in Arizona where he was, and was the primary caregiver for him. And it was a very sudden thing. It was about during a 2-week period. And I remember talking to her afterwards, all these people, all the relatives and friends converged on, the house when they had the memorial service for him. And then as quickly, everybody was gone. And she said that was the hardest time. There was something about having people there talking about, I remember good old Ed, and them telling stories and stuff. But then, at some point, people have to go away.
And all you're left with is the dirty plate the fried chicken came on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of true.
Yeah.
So, looking at Focus Note 18, how important do you think it is to name the person involved? That's at the bottom of 282. How mentioning the lost ones in my name helps. Oftentimes you see sympathy cards, the standard sympathy cards, and they say, yes, basically, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry, you're not hearing me, Carol?
No, I'm hearing you.
Okay.
I'm just thinking about these generic cards and how
Yeah.
antiseptic they are. It's important to honor a person by using their name, of course, for heaven's sakes.
When
I do
you,
see though that you might think you might be hurting them if you mention the person's name too. Or
I think it's quite the opposite. When a baby dies in the emergency room, we're taught to always use the baby's name when speaking with the parents and the family. It's vital that you do that, because it makes the family remember that was a human being.
Mhm.
I know my wife worked a number of years in the NICU, and she said, that was, that's a hard time, when you have something like that happen. But it was important to express yourself with with the people and, the parents in the family, and make sure that that child is recognized as a person.
Yes. Yes.
Let's look at page 283, the practicing grief care. Right, the funeral's over and you, with the esteemed minister at your home, react with a denial and disbelief. Voice thoughts such as, "It can't be. He was perfectly healthy. I just feel like if I turn around, he'd be right there." Then be most silent for the rest of the skill practice, only responding briefly to anything the minister says to you. Begin the skill practice by saying, "I just can't believe he's dead." So, I just can't believe he's dead. How are you going to respond, Stephen Minister?
Oh, so that's when you have two people.
Well, I'm asking you the question as the care receiver right now.
Mhm.
I'm saying that's one of my responses. I can't believe he's dead.
Yeah.
What are you going to tell me? What are you going to say to me?
This has been a terrible shock for you.
That's good.
No wonder you feel like that. I understand.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Well, then think about the understanding. Do we really understand somebody else's loss?
Mm. Ah, good point.
There's that frame of reference thing again, I guess. How to deal with the person based on their frame of
Mhm,
reference.
mhm.
This was one that happened quickly, or is it, yeah, he was perfectly healthy,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, if you don't say I understand, could you say I realize this is difficult for you? Was saying, using the word realize, or I
Mhm,
don't know.
mhm. It must be so difficult for
Yeah.
you to be going through this.
Mm-hmm.
Would it help to talk about talk about it?
Yeah, you're reaching for a conversation.
Yes.
I think I would put my arm around them and say, I know, or it's
Well, that's good.
something that, just know that I'm here right now.
That's
And
good.
I'm not sure I'd start a conversation yet.
Hmm. Hmm.
That would be, again, it's a hypothetical, but based on the paragraph here, I'm not sure that a conversation is what's needed quite yet. When
Mhm.
they say, I just can't believe he's dead. I don't know. I'm a big believer in physical contact at certain,
Hmm.
but also,
Mhm.
the skills that they tell us in the book is to also, to say, I think it's perfectly natural that you can't believe it at this point. I'm here. Maybe then, if the response was thank you or something like that, then I might say, would you like to just, is there anything about it you want to talk right now, or you just want to sit here?
Mhm. Yeah, that's good, Kelly.
Yeah, it seems the simplest is good. Just simple action or a movement of care and concern.
Mhm.
So let's look at focus note 21. It's been 3 months since your mother died. You're still angry with the emergency responders for not showing up sooner and with the hospital staff for not saving your mother, although you realize they did everything they could. Tell your Stephen minister about these feelings and talk about the guilt you feel because your mother has been under the weather the entire day she died and you didn't take her to the doctor sooner. So those are what I as a care receiver, those are the feelings I have. I feel guilty because
Yeah.
I didn't do the right thing, or I don't think I did the right thing. And then I feel guilty because I don't think the emergency responders that I eventually called came quickly enough and that the people at the hospital did all they could.
Hmm.
How are you going to respond to me?
You did the best you could, or you did what you thought was right. Can you say that?
Okay. How about my blaming though? So I blamed the responders. They
Mhm.
weren't quick enough. I blamed the doctor. They didn't, the hospital didn't do enough.
Mhm.
I think I would just reflect on her feelings. You know, just reflect them back. You feel like things were out of your control that day? Do you feel like things were out of your control? A lot of things that happened were out of your control, and then she can reflect, or he could reflect some more on that.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about that. Oh, yeah. At the end, it tells you to go back and look at that chapter on feelings. Do you remember that one where you mask your feelings? And I think she's masking here, where you have guilt,
Hmm.
but you push the guilt away and you have anger. Or I think that was two that went together.
Yeah.
And that's what she's doing. She's feeling guilt, but she's angry at the hospital and the emergency staff. And you can't stop those feelings. And thank goodness we're there to listen and hear them. So all I feel like you can do is clarify, echo, echo,
Hmm.
clarify. You're feeling this. Is that what it is? You're feeling like things were out of control that day. And boy, is it hard when you have a loved one and things and you can't control it. You can't fix it, you know. So
One of the things I find with the attorney advertisements is that it's sort of like, let's find somebody to blame.
Hmm.
Especially in the
Sometimes,
world today, you can do that.
you slipped and fell in the store. Let's sue the store.
Yeah.
Mhm. I'm going to have some trouble in certain situations, and this was a very good example. I immediately wanted to jump into the therapist role of reflection and recapping
Mm.
and getting her to finally ease the guilt through that process. And I'm not sure that that would be appropriate for me to do in this situation.
Hmm.
But I'm not sure that getting them to recap it and reflect on it is a bad idea. I
No.
just,
No.
it's been 3 months, so
yeah.
that's important to know. So I think
Yeah.
I'm feeling okay that you could kind of feel that out,
Yeah.
feel out how they respond with that. I just think that's a skill you have that I would be afraid to move to.
Hmm.
But
You might be you might be very surprised that that would come naturally to you to want to do that, especially if you've been with them going through this for 3 months. You may be at wit's end and ready to try something different.
oh, that's
Hmm.
true.
True.
You've heard that over and over again. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
That's a good point. And oh boy, you're reminding me the Suzanne that I was walking alongside. She was stuck on something. Wow, I remember this. And I did nudge her along. So, but I will tell you, Kelly, when I hung up the phone, I was so worried that I had done something I shouldn't. But I was trying to nudge her out of that lane.
Well, did it work?
But yeah, she told me later it was good. She was glad I did it. But yeah, I see your point.
Well, and there's a big distinction we made. If we've been working with this person for the whole 3 months, it's a whole different dynamic than coming in at the 3-month mark
Yeah.
as a new presence in that person's life. That would be two very different situations.
And I think Kelly, you as a professional in the business, it would probably be okay if you did that because you would know how.
Yeah, but you know, again, following the rules that we're being taught here, I shouldn't go that pathway. Instead, if it's been 3 months, I would have probably brought it up to the leadership group a few times that she's sticking with the anger.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe after doing that, I could propose that this is what I'd like to do, and everyone would agree.
Yeah.
And if she is sticking with the anger at 3 months, maybe a recommendation to a grief therapist would be a helpful recommendation.
Or even, you know, there's a couple of very abbreviated kind of anger management courses that are very good.
Hmm.
And a lot of them are specific to those still grieving over a death and being angry or
Yeah.
feeling guilt. Yeah.
Mhm.
One of the things you don't know for sure is at what point you may have become that person's Stephen minister, and it may have been, an extended period of time that the death has occurred, and all of a sudden something has popped up that has become,
Mm.
that would a Stephen minister would be beneficial.
Hmm.
A lot of times that occurs because of the suppression. Oftentimes we don't want to talk about it, and we don't want to have people come and mentioning dear old mom or things that happen. And so sometimes it takes them getting to that point where they are suddenly ready to talk. And
Mm.
that could be down the road after the
Yeah.
funeral. You never know at what point you might be getting somebody as a Stephen minister. As the last focus note was the care receiver situation, was where it had been a year and a half since the spouse had died. And although you feel sad and the worst of it seems to be over, and now you're thinking about your future, you feel very lonely, but the thought of resuming social life is threatening to you, frightening. You've been alone for so long that you aren't sure you'll be able to handle the situation. Okay. I, as the care receiver, I'm saying that to you. Listen, man, how can I give back into to life?
Mhm. Mhm.
We're all taught, whether formally or informally, that about a year is supposed to be the time
Mm.
you grieve, particularly a spouse, and oftentimes it seemed that somebody has moved awful fast. If a month later they're dating, you know.
Mhm. Well, I would think in this situation, it would be natural to say, well, let's talk about some of those things you'd like to get back into, and maybe how that might be how that might happen, how that would look to you,
Mhm.
how to make it a comfortable reentry. Let's talk about that. What do you think?
I agree. And I think talking about things, well, what was it that you enjoyed about your life together? If we're talking about a spouse, you know,
Mhm.
or what are the things, some of the things that you remember about your times with your parents, you know?
Mhm. I think the more open-ended questions that are neutral are the most effective. I'm realizing, you know,
Mhm.
leading questions.
And
Leading,
Nick,
loving questions.
we're getting to the caregivers compass review. Now, I have not been following up on that each time, but how have you responded to this session,
Yes, I
the
did.
compass review? Would you like to share?
Sure, sure. So I don't know. I just kind of respond to how this, well, here's a, like compassion. I said, I think you can show compassion when you reflect back to the CR's words rather than recommending some kind of fix. You show compassion when you do that. So that's what I wrote there. Full of faith, I said, well, sometimes I say I have to be their faith right now when they have lost theirs. And I have extra prayers of the faith, and you know how that one beautiful scripture that the Holy Spirit will pray for us when we can't pray. And I do extra prayer for that person and ask the Spirit to pray for them. For skilled, I wrote, oh, this is my thing. I don't always believe, and you might have picked this up, in my own skills. And even though we've had this class, I still lack sometimes confidence and belief in myself. So I know I will rely on the Spirit's direction for me. My trustworthiness is my compassion and listening and confidentiality are important to build trust so my caregiver can take risks and share things that are deep and meaningful and need to be shared. So that's how I do it. Just kind of reflect on. I don't know if I did it right, but that's what I did.
That's fine. Anybody else?
I would add that before an interaction with the care receiver, I make sure to pray and ask God for help and leadership in the process. Because it will be there. It will be there.
One thing's for sure, you're not alone in this,
Right.
For skilled, I'd have to go back probably and do a lot of review on different things, make sure I can remember, what should I say or what's a good thing. And trustworthy, just making sure the confidentiality, like she said. And
Well, I really feel because of my weakness on believing in myself, that it'll be important for me to have meetings, regular meetings with the team.
Yeah, this is such delicate territory that we're walking into that I think our supervisory team, our gathering will really be important to us.
With regard to full of faith, one of the comments that I really liked in this chapter was sometimes your care receivers feelings toward God and what God has wrought within all of this process, sometimes it can go either way. You know, they can say, they can blame God all the way to basically renewing their own, what's the word?
Faith.
Relationship with God. And yeah, and so I would probably, I'd like to know where they are with that, if I could somehow take a little bit of an idea of, you know, where they are with their feeling toward that. And then
Mhm.
if they have an anger toward God, I think we have to go in one direction very differently than if they realize that this is God's plan. You know, saying God's plan, of course, is one of those platitudes, but you know, but if they think that that is, I think that's important for us to know. So I think at some point I would probably ask in some way or fashion, you know, about how they're feeling spiritually about this.
Mhm.
You know, I think yeah, I agree with you. And you know what, I remember, I may have already shared this story when I was in a lot of grief and blame over one of my children and being in the hospital and no one knew what was wrong. And I was angry. And the pastor came to visit me at the bedside of my daughter. And I was mad. And he says, where, I probably already told you this, but I loved his question. Where do you think God is in all of this?
Mm.
I just love that question.
Yeah, that actually exemplifies exactly what I was trying to say. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very good.
Yeah, and since we will normally be dealing with people in church, you know, from within our congregation, that's, you know, that's something you can't just make an assumption, even though the person may sit next to you every Sunday. You know, you
Mm.
need to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember sitting next to people in church, and then something would, yeah, a conversation would come up, and all of a sudden you realize that this has really been more of a social thing for them, and not in the same spiritual way that you took it when you are in the church. You know, I think everybody's having a different experience. I think it's really would be interesting about the experience, to find out the experience of people that are watching, you know, the church service on YouTube or Facebook versus the in person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know that Ben, that's something that Ben has to really be conscious of, you know, making sure that he's welcoming to both.
Yeah.
I think it is
My
so, I think it's so interesting about the small groups that have formed around watching, you know, coming together and watching the sermon.
my Jewish sister never misses a Sunday at Trinity.
Wow.
And and the other day, well, she always says, I see you wore that black shirt again. But the other day, she said, what is it that you appreciate the most about these services? And I thought that was a fair, you know, because she's the type that will ask you a question so she can give you her answer to that question. But you know, but I thought it was an intriguing question. And I think the answer for me is it provides an hour of downtime where I actually get into a prayerful mode. It's not necessarily the hymns or the sermon, but it's maybe the conglomeration of all of that.
Mhm.
But she actually finds Ben as a Christian minister to be very intriguing. So this whole internet, television, church stuff, I think has much broader ramifications than we all realize.
Yeah, probably.
You know, at the time that we became locked down, I suggested to Ben about I wanted to continue our Sunday school class. And what was a way to do that? And we had talked about Zoom.
Mhm.
And so we've been doing that for quite a while, particularly since a number of the people that are in the Sunday school, you know, have a hard time to getting to church anyway. And interestingly, we've gotten some members, you know, that are relatives of other people that have, you know, just wanted to see what it was all about and have enjoyed the experience. So the reason I'm saying that is that's led me to watch on YouTube at 11 o'clock more, because there's, you know, Sunday school's over at 11 and there's no way you could get down there. You have to make your choice. And yet I found that I've gotten a lot out of being able to sit and listen. You know, oftentimes when you're in the congregation, you know, I wear hearing aids, and something that's being said, you know, in the sermon or hymns that are being sung, they may sail over your head, you know, and this way you feel like you get things a little closer.
Hmm.
So I think they've been both beneficial in both ways.
Hmm.
Well, our next topic is about grieving. And that's for number 13. So I will leave you with that. I think we've actually finished up a little sooner than I had anticipated. But does anybody else have anything else they'd like to contribute about this
I was just gonna
module?
say, if you don't get to church because of your Sunday school, you can bring your computer or laptop to church and do your Sunday
Yes.
school there, and then you could go make it to church.
Yeah, I've dealt with, is that a laziness on my part? Is it easier for me to sit down because I've got everything laid out,
Oh,
you know? Or is it, should I be dragging it down, or not dragging, but taking it down and doing it, you know, because Ben's offered he says, I never used my old office. He says, most of what I do is in, you know, in my in the living room table or dining room table.
Yeah.
And we've talked a few times about how he says, I'm not always sure Katie appreciates that. That's what the dining room table is, where I have all my stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Try it out. See what happens.
yeah. Anybody else have something?
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Well, it has been a good session.
Yeah, I really benefited from this chapter, so I really.
And Peggy, you're going to be a natural.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
You
I
already
think-
are a natural.
I think
Yeah.
everybody will do just fine. Well, take care. Have a
Thank
good
you.
week. Tell William I said hi. I hope he
okay.
gets to feeling better. He can do this. I know.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
when are
Folks,
Have a-
bye-bye.
when
Y'all
are we
take
meeting
care.
again?
Bye.
When are we
Okay.
meeting again?
Huh?
I wanted to know when we were meeting again.
Oh, yeah.
Our next meeting will be the Zoom meeting in July. which would be,
It's the third
Uh,
week, is it?
yes. Mm,
Got my calendar right here.
stretching over to the calendar. It
Third
would be
week?
the 20th.
Yeah.
And then we would meet or excuse me, it'd be the 13th, and then we'd meet in person on the 16th, which would be the third Sunday.
Okay.
Oh, we meet the second Thursday then?
Yeah,
Well,
do
we
the-
meet the Thursday that's right before the third Sunday is what
Right.
it is.
Oh,
So
okay.
look at the third Sunday and then whatever Thursday is
Yep,
before
that's
that.
it then. the
Okay,
13th, okay.
13th and 16th.
Okay,
All right.
thank
I
you.
don't remember dates very well, Peggy, so I just remember third Sunday and the Thursday
too.
right before that, whatever day that is.
Thanks so much,
I
Mark.
think I sent that out a calendar at one time, but
Yes, and it's in, I'm sure it's there. But
all right.
if I don't make it, print it out, it's, you know. Anyway, thank you, Mark.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good one.